Okay, we're back again. I'm going to talk about the timeline of events of the last 7 years before Jesus returned. And I started out by giving you the infallible timeline framework that's built from Ezekiel 39. Then we went with another chart which has the timeline critical path of events, the fundamental chart. And in this video we're going to have the all filled in completed chart of the timeline critical path of events, which is to my side, and it's in, the path is in red, starting in the upper left hand corner, stair stepping down through the 7 years to Jesus' return in the lower left on day 2520, which we get from multiplying 7 years times 360 years, days a year, to get 2,520 days long. First day, in the upper left hand corner, is when the Antichrist, who has come from Europe as the little horn, right after Gog Magog, the Jews think he's the Messiah, and the false prophet person anoints him the King of Israel, which is the function of being the Messiah. The King of Israel promised to lead the Jews, Israel, and the world into the Messianic age of peace and safety. So that's why they'll be saying peace and safety as he has come to power as the King of Israel. And in Revelation, in Revelation 6, we have the riders on the horses, they're sometimes called the riders of the apocalypse. The first rider's riding a white horse and has been given a crown. That's that person. The world is saying peace and safety, and for the first 3 years it looked like that as we zigzag down through our chart. And on the chart, on this particular chart, I've got the scriptural passages referenced. So they'll be saying peace and safety according to 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 3. Then, all of a sudden, after 3 years, we don't know exactly how long, because we don't have enough information to determine when he goes into the temple, stops the daily sacrifice, sits and declares himself to be God. Daily sacrifice is stopped in Daniel 8:11 and also in Daniel 9:27. When he sits in the temple declaring himself to be God or have achieved godhood, that's the transgression of desolation. It's very important to differentiate transgression of desolation, which is an act, from the abomination of desolation, which later on will be a thing, basically an idol of this person placed on the Temple Mount, and everyone required to worship it. So he commits the transgression of desolation in 2 Thessalonians 2:4, and also is referenced in Daniel 8, verses 12 through 13, revealing himself to be the man of sin and not the Messiah after all, as the Jews will be thinking at that time, which by doing that act, the Jews will then reject him from continuing as the King of Israel, and they'll turn to Jesus in the middle of those 7 years and embrace him as the true Messiah. Once this person has been killed, which is in Ezekiel 28, 7 through 10. He finds a soul in hell, in the pit, and next to the pit. In Isaiah 14, it picks up there with verses 15 through 20, where he's mocked. And God, in disdain for the person, because he will be a Jew, and acting totally out of character, as a Jew was supposed to act regarding the covenant and being respectful of God, he kicks the guy's soul out of hell. He doesn't let him stay there, as this is all part of God's total plan to bring the demise of Satan's kingdom, called Babylon the Great, to its end, and also to bring to the end Satan and his third of the angels that rebelled against God, to bring their influence over humanity and all the kings of the earth and all the peoples of the earth, what they have done to create violence and destruction. God, ever since, even before the Garden of Eden. God brings him back to life in Isaiah 14, verses 18 through 20. When the person comes back to life, it's at that point he becomes the beast. The world will see him as he comes back to life in Revelation 17:8, Part B. The beast that was, is not, yet is. In 17:8a, it's the beast who was and is not, as in the bottomless pit. That part is referring to, in my opinion, the original beast serpent that was in the Garden of Eden, that is now, but will come out as a disembodied spirit to possess the end times revealed man of sin when he comes back to life, thus making that person the beast. So the beast will be getting his power from Satan, and he'll be acting as a great deceiver, an evil, quote, beast for that last 42 months, as he has the world worship him, and he controls the world for that amount of time. And many of them who are alive will think his earlier claim of having achieved godhood, yeah, it looks like it's true. And they will worship this person as well, because his gospel will be, follow me and my gospel, and you too can achieve eternal life, where death will no longer have a control over you. So many people will jump onto that gospel, worship him, take his mark of his name, which is in Revelation 14, because it's not just his mark, but it's also the mark of his name, or the number of his name, or his name. Everything is attached to his name, you might want to know. So a false prophet, after this person comes back to life, has an image made of him and placed on the temple. That's on the chart, and it's called the abomination of desolation. And our references are in Matthew 24:15, verse 15, and in Daniel 12, verses 11 through 12, which we are also given time frames associated with abomination of desolation. So we take our end date of day 2520, subtract 1,335 days from that, and we come up with, on the chart, day 1185, when this abomination of desolation will be placed on the temple mount, where everyone can see it. I also want to backtrack a little bit when the revealed man of sin is killed. I show the rider on the red horse, which signifies that war breaks out on earth at that time, where previously the world had been in a state of peace and safety, not of war. When the war breaks out, that is when this person will be killed in Ezekiel 28, verses 1 through 10, by what is called strangers. He'll probably be assassinated. So war has broken out on the earth as this person has more or less upset the apple cart of peace and safety. Then, once the false prophet sets the abomination of desolation statue image up on the Temple Mount, we have the rider on the black horse begins to ride, which the black horse represents starvation and death due to famine and disease. This is because the Great Tribulation has started, triggered with the abomination of desolation set up. And then all the trumpet judgments of God in Revelation and the bowls of God's wrath will start being poured out upon the world. And so there'll be a shortage of food. Food chain will be interrupted because of those judgments, which destroy the fish in the seas, the green grass, where all the herd animals graze, and all up and down the food chain. Food becomes more scarce, and people will die because of starvation and disease coming along with that, because the earth will become barren. There will be dead bodies everywhere. Sea turns to blood at different progressive stages. Be a horrible time. And all through that same time, to buy and sell under those circumstances, it will be required to take either of those three identifying elements of the mark, his name, or the number of his name. If we look at the chart down at the bottom, we see two witnesses testifying. Testimony starts at day one, right off the start. They will be telling the Jews, don't trust this guy, he's not the Messiah as you think, he's the Antichrist. They'll be testifying during all that time in Jerusalem. They'll do that for 1,260 days until in Revelation 11 it says the beast, after this person becomes the beast, he'll make war on them and destroy them. And they will be lying in the streets of Jerusalem 3.5 days until God brings them back to life and they ascend to heaven, as everyone will be watching. It'll be a miraculous event. Once that's happened, the seventh angel, trumpet, who will have the trumpets, he will sound. And at that point, that's when the finalization of God's plan to bring the kingdom of God here to earth, to replace all human kingdoms as being the dominant kingdom on this earth, where righteousness will prevail and Jesus will be ruling from here on this earth. Seventh angel sounds, and it says, the kingdoms of this world are become the kingdoms of God and his Christ. That's a process that's going to take the second half of the 7 years. Satan, at that point, is cast down from the second heaven in Revelation 12, 7 through 9. The second heaven is what we would call the cosmos or the universe. That's later going to be parted. And everyone on the earth and its atmosphere, which is the first heaven, will be able to look up and at the very end of the 7 years, and they're going to see Jesus before the throne of God, sickle in a hand. In Revelation, the sixth seal, prepared to execute judgment on all the evil that's been done over the time of the beast's rule, and the persecution and the martyring of the saints who refused to take the mark, take the name, or the number of the name. So we show on the chart Satan being cast down to earth, him and his third of the angels, as God starts tightening the noose on them. He has only a times and a half a time left. That's in Revelation 12:14, which he utilizes that time to persecute the saints and the Jews in Jerusalem, and who did not escape, did not leave, did not heed Jesus' words to, as soon as they see the abomination of desolation set up, flee into the mountains where you'll get divine protection by God. And Satan will not be able to harm you while you're in that protected area. But those who don't flee in time, who think they have to prepare better and get things better together and more or less trying to hang on to their lives, they're going to be caught there in Jerusalem and held as hostages. So as Great Tribulation continues through its time, the rider on the pale horse, which is called death and hell, which means a massive number of persons on the earth will die. Some say at least a third. And or it could be even 2/3, because one of the trumpet judgments is that there will be a great army that will come from the east, a 200 million strong army, and they will kill a third of mankind. So that appears to me as they are marching west toward Armageddon to battle the beast, because the beast has been unable to stop God's judgments on the earth. And all the different sectors of the world, the 4 different sectors, 3 of them, the north, the south, and the east, will have to come into the Middle East to try to get the beast out of power, because he will be funneling all the resources, all the oil, all the food to the west. He'll be considered the king of the west near the end. In Daniel 11 verses 40 through 44, he's attacked from the south, that would be the African nations, and the north, that would be the remains of the Russian armies, which are rebuilt, repopulated from the Gog-Magog experience earlier, 3.5 years earlier, plus the 42 months earlier, so it's almost 7 years. They'll have 7 years to have repopulated their armies. All the stand countries will be stronger at that time. So they'll be coming back down from the north as the south attacks the beast in Jerusalem, and then the kings of the east, they come marching in toward him as well. And on the way they'll be killing all his followers, which many of them will be in India, Pakistan, that populated part of the world. So that they'll be killing all those people on their way. It's going to be awful. So once they get into the Middle East, battling against the beast, that's when suddenly, like a thief in the night, in Revelation 16 it says, Jesus appears in heaven, and he's coming. And it appears in heaven when the universe parts in the sixth seal in Revelation 6. And the world sees him before the throne of God, sickle in hand, which sends terror into the beast and all them who have taken his mark and all the evil men on the world, in the world. So those kings of earth, they say we have no recourse. They'll be terrified, but they'll have no recourse but to try to make war on Jesus, to stop him from executing all those evil men. So 1,290 days from Daniel 12, verse 11, that's where the 1,290 days are. We look on our chart from day 1185 plus 1,290 days, we come up to when the sixth seal event happens, which is on the chart. The Great Tribulation has not stopped. In Matthew 24:29, they say the tribulation of those days, after the tribulation of those days, it's most of the Great Tribulation is over, but it's a little different than the Great Tribulation being totally completed, because there are still some hard times ahead, even after they assemble at Armageddon. In Zechariah 14 it says that time will be the worst time in Jewish history, and half the city will go into captivity as part of the plan for the last-ditch effort to save themselves, their own skin. The kings of earth with the beast and false prophet take half of Jerusalem as hostage. Not going to work. Jesus descends from heaven and splits the Mount of Olives in half, and them in Jerusalem escape through the valley created by his standing on the Mount of Olives, which in Acts 1, that's where he left the world, and the angel said he'll be coming back to that place. So when he returns, there will be the image of the beast, the statue image of the beast, on the Temple Mount, out in the open, everybody will see it. And there will be the false prophet, and there will be the beast person. The statue image will be, at that time, incarnated by Satan. That's how everybody ends up worshiping Satan. And God says in Ezekiel 28:16 through 19, that he is going to bring a fire in the midst of Satan, and that he's going to turn into ashes. That's when the brightness of Jesus coming melts that outer facade of the statue image. And there on the Temple Mount, Satan's going to be exposed for the whole world to see. And that's, at that point, the beast and the false prophet will be cast. I look forward to next time, where I'm going to be discussing some of the time frames